Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the underground world of Agartha. I am Marcus Aurelius, and this is a Dominions 4 7-player free-for-all game. And currently, the players are myself, Daz Tactic, Dwarf Comic, Sabouts, Wade Star, Battle Moose, and Tortuga Power. Now, the way the series is working is all of us have our own playlists, which I will link below in a pinned comment and also as part of the playlist information of my playlist. However, as a gentleman's agreement, we are not allowed to watch each other's videos. Even so, the videos will only come 5 turns behind where we are currently in the game. And for me, my videos are actually going to come a little bit further than that because I'm recording multiple turns in one video. I'm playing the nation of Middle Age Agartha, which is a nation that I have no familiarity with, and I would like to thank both Jay Camo and Chris Lighthawk, who provided me all of the strategies that I'm going to be using to get this started. Anything good I do is their responsibility, and anything bad I do is probably my own, because again, I am not a talented multiplayer at this game. I enjoy playing Dominions 4 single player to experience a story, and if you are familiar with my single player campaigns, you understand that. The kind of annoying and duplicitous nature of Dominions 4 diplomacy doesn't sit very well for me, and that's why I tend to avoid it, and you'll probably get a feeling for my distaste of it in this game. But without further ado, let's go forward and look at what we've got here. So first thing I want to do is I want to show you my pretender. My pretender is for those about to rock. The game forces me to write down my password every time I look at my pretender, so I'm just going to cut the video right now and come back after it's done. Okay, so here we are at For Those About to Rock, the Monolith. Now I chose an immobile, imprisoned pretender, and the reason why I did that was to go with a bless strategy. This was actually suggested by Chris Lighthawk. It's a 9 earth, 9 nature bless, and what that provides is reinvigoration and regeneration. And this is very important because Agartha has sacred summonable units that are inanimate, that are statues. And so this allows them to heal, essentially, because otherwise they don't heal. So any damage they take in battle, they carry with them. As they're statues, they don't mend flesh. So with regeneration, they can heal, which is very useful to me. Now, one main reason against imprisoning your pretender is in order to claim thrones. Because some nations, such as Ulm, for example, that I played in my previous campaign, the only priests capable of claiming thrones with that nation are the prophet and the pretender. However, Agartha has a recruitable 3 holy priest. Capital only, but still, so I don't necessarily need a pretender to claim thrones, which is another reason why I went with the points instead of a mobile pretender. However, despite having him be immobile and imprisoned, I still had to take some negative scales to make my magic paths worth it. So I've got 3 heat and 2 misfortune, which are both a negative to my nation. However, misfortune is somewhat mitigated by the fact that my recruitable mages, some of them have fortune telling, which prevents misfortune. So as long as I have at least one of them in every province where I have a fort, I should be okay. Growth 2. Growth is necessary because we're fighting against Ermor in this campaign, and Asphodel. Both, I believe, have dominions that kill population, although it might just be Ermor. And then we have 1 production and 1 order. I would have wanted more of both of them, but this is all I could get. And of course, I took an unusually strong dominion for me. I'm comfortable around 5 or 6, but I took 7 because, again, Ermor's dominion kills people, so I don't want any of my lands to fall under the sway of Ermor's dominion. The pretender itself is really tough, a lot of hit points, a lot of protection, so if the pretender is ever attacked with something that's not a specialist army designed to take it out, he should do quite well. I did take 2 astral on the advice of Chris Lighthawk, because that will allow me at some point later to teleport my pretender if that ever becomes necessary. So that is for those about to rock. Now let's look at our turns. Okay. In the beginning, as we all know, there was chaos, but now the wheel has turned once again. So this is where I start. And it's really hard to get an idea of what this represents in just this small zoomed in method. So I'm going to be putting a map up on the screen right now, which is actually based on my knowledge as of turn 8. So a little further than this episode really goes into, but I want to give you a feel for where we stand in the world. Now bear in mind, this is a wraparound map. So even though it looks like I am safe up in the northwest corner, I really am not. In fact, I'm the closest nation probably to Ermor. As you can see, I've listed on the map where I believe the capitals of all of my enemies are, based on diplomacy, my own scouting, and guesses. I've also put a yellow star where I think all of the thrones are. Well, I mean, I know exactly where all the thrones are. You can see them here on the map. But some of them are in weird places. Like this one right here, for example, it is kind of on the border between two provinces, so I don't know exactly what province it's in. But as you can see, the closest people to me are Ermor up here and Man here. Now, Man is Daz's tactic, and I have communicated with him extensively, which you'll see in the comments or the messages. I intend to fully honor an alliance with Daz. I have no interest in fighting with Daz. I have no interest in backstabbing Daz. I want to maintain a peaceful border with Daz throughout the length of this campaign until such a time as we have no choice but to fight one another. Now, he may decide to go back on that, but I certainly will not, and I hope that he remains honorable as well. I will enter into diplomatic negotiations with other factions, and I will set up temporary alliances with them as well, but the one with Daz is the one I am intending to be game long and holding. So again, I'm more comfortable not being duplicitous. I'm more comfortable saying, look, I am your enemy or I am your friend, and sticking with that, so I intend to do that. It's an opportunity for Daz, certainly, to betray me, and I'm not going to be stupid. I mean, I'm going to keep my capital defended and whatnot, since we are very close, but I'm hoping that we can both succeed and thrive without having to resort to harming one another. Alright, but anyways, my first move, I prophetized my first cave commander, Birdiebot. Birdiebot, strangely enough, should be in this game, but she doesn't even own Dominions 4, which I thought was pretty funny when I found that out. I figured it'd be something that'd be right up her alley, but I guess not. But she will be here in spirit as my prophet. And then Sneaky Pete, my scout. Sneaky Pete is going into the Great Feral, where the throne is. It's a throne that borders me. He is not, however, sneaking into it. He's moving into it so I could see with surety what defenders are guarding that throne. As far as recruitment, let's talk about Agartha's units. So Agartha has a mix of human and Pale One units. Now the Pale Ones are interesting. They have a lot of hit points and they are amphibious, but they also are larger and they typically don't wear as good armor. But let's just go through it. We have, of course, scouts that everyone has. We have cave captains, which are your basic leaders. We have troglodyte trainers, which is what's interesting about them is they provide a +4 to the morale of troglodytes because they provide +2 to slaves and +2 to beasts, and the troglodyte slaves are both of them. They also are ambidextrous, but I don't really care about that. Then we have Pale One captains, which are similar to the human captains, except they have a siege bonus, they have inspirational, and they are amphibian. As far as our mages, we have 3. 1 human priest, that is the attendant of the oracles, and then 2 human mages. The Earth Reader, who comes standard with 1 earth, but is also a priest, but also has, as I mentioned, the fortune-telling ability. These guys will be my main researchers because they will do double duty in providing research, but also protecting our lands from our misfortune dominion. And then there are the Golem Crafters. These are our main mages. They are unfortunately old age, but they do have 2 earth, 1 water, and 1 fire. So they're going to be the majority of my battle mages. Agartha is not too flexible as a nation. The mages tend to come with what they come with, and you just have to make it work. They are not fortune tellers, and they're not very sturdy, but they are going to be what I'm initially starting off with in terms of site searching and summoning, and eventually they will join my armies as battle mages. Then when we get to the Pale One commanders, we have the Ancient Lord. This is a great commander, a lot of hit points, does wear armor, is sacred, which is worth noting, since I have a bless strategy, amphibian, cold-blooded, need not eat, siege bonus, and another positive inspirational. So any troops he leads have morale +1. Then we have the Oracle of the Ancients. These are my 3 holy guys. They have 3 earth, 1 death, and they do have a chance of a fire, water, earth, death, and another fire, water, earth, and death. So these guys, it's a shame that they're so expensive and they take so long to recruit, because they would be, in any other nation, they would be my main mage that I would want. They also are fortune tellers. They also have inspiration. They also are sacred. And they can claim thrones. So I'm going to be trying to get these guys out as soon as I possibly can. They don't, however, wear armor. So luckily, they are pretty healthy, and they will have regeneration, but still, I may want to forge some armor for them at some point. Maybe a robe of shadows or something like that. Although we don't have any natural astral, except for my pretender, I think. As far as troops, we have 3 varieties of human infantry. We have light infantry, which is basic across the board. We have medium infantry, which is a little bit better in terms of protection. We have heavy infantry, a lot better in terms of protection, but you sacrifice a bit of defense skill. Then as far as pale ones, we have naked pale ones, the wet ones. These guys would normally be used for underwater expansion. In fact, now's the point where I tell you that my start in this game has been really, really bad. My strategy, as it was written out, and based on the 5 test games that I ran myself, and also the information I received from advisors, is to focus on money in the early game and not production, because we tended to have a lot more money in all the test games and very little production. So the idea was to start massing troglodytes to begin with and get them out. However, my location in this start is completely surrounded by mountains and forests, no farmlands anywhere, and so I'm hurting really badly for money, but I have plenty of production. So I've had to kind of change my strategy on the fly from what I intended to do. But also, in all of my test games, I started off relatively close to water, and because Agartha is an amphibious nation, it's important that I claim the water early to avoid like Ermor or the Bakemono from getting it as well. I'm not able to do this, of course, because my capital is about as far from water as you can possibly be on this map. So these wet ones are kind of useless to me at this time. Then we have Pale One Soldiers, which are essentially just wet ones with armor and a little bit of a siege bonus. Maybe the wet ones? Yeah, they all have siege bonuses. Then finally, there's the Defender of the Halls. These guys are pretty good because they have castle defense bonus. So it would make sense to have them defending my castles. One interesting thing to note about Pale Ones in general, why you'd want to have a Pale One army instead of a human army. A human army in most cases is better because they're smaller, you can mass them more easily. But a Pale One army is useful against, let's say, Ermor. If we were to go into lands that Ermor has already despoiled, a Pale One army needing not to eat would be very useful because a human army would starve. So then we have Troglodytes, Troglodyte slaves. Again, they have low morale because they're slaves, so the Beastmaster helps a lot. But they have Trample, which is their greatest ally. Against independent troops, normal human-sized troops, they wreck them. The problem is I expected to have a ton of money and not a lot of production, and it turns out I have a ton of production and not a lot of money. And by production, I mean resources. So my strategy of heavy recruitment into Troglodytes kind of got stalled early on. Then we have the Ancient Stone Hurlers, sacred troops with a standard effect. They are the only ranged troop that Agartha really has, and they can throw boulders. They can throw... Does it say how many they have? It doesn't. Maybe they can keep throwing boulders. I'm not sure. Nope, they only have 5. But that's not something I'm really going to invest a lot in. And then we have the Ancient Ones, who are also sacred, have leadership, or standard, I should say. And they also can throw rocks, but they only have 2 of them. So, if I ever want sacred, major infantry, I guess I'd go with these guys, but for the most part, instead, what I'm going with is a Shard Guard army. Now, the Shard Guard are interesting because they are also sacred, they are also amphibian, but they have a Shard Glaive, which is a magical attack that curses who it hits. So I'm really focusing hard on them. I figure if I have to utilize my sacreds, which I have to in a blessed strategy, out of these 3 guys, the Shard Guard are the best. They're also, I believe, size 3, and these guys are size 4, which means you can mass them a bit more effectively in one square. So it's harder to have multiple enemies attacking them at once as it would be for these guys. So my initial strategy is to recruit as many Shard Guards as I can afford, which as you can see here is 2. and then as many troglodytes after that as I could afford, which as you can see here is 4. And then with the little bit of remaining I had, I got 2 light infantry. I'm getting Earth Readers to jumpstart my research. Agartha starts on research very, 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 very slow. So I need all the help I can get. In terms of research, I'm starting with enchantment, which will get me attentive statues. Now these are human statues. They are not sacred, but still they're an addition to my forces. But I want to get down to level 3 where we have sentinels, which are sacred, pale 1 statues, and so can be used effectively with my blessed strategy. Any one of my mages can cast them. Not the research mages, but the other ones. Living Mercury is situational. I'm not really going to be using that much. But the Enliven Granite Guard, and finally the Enliven Marble Oracle are really big, important spells for me. The Marble Oracle is a commander, so that's useful. Once that's done, of course, Conjuration's important, because we have Ruach's Pact and Batharus Pact, which allows us to get Magma Elementals and I think Minor Earth Elementals. But really what's important here is the Penumbrals, which are ethereal, I believe, and so very worth having to back up our army. And Shard Whites, they're also death. Now my initial strategy when I first decided to take Agartha was to mass these guys, Olms. They're basically giant snakes with psychic powers. And what's useful about them is when you're fighting an army that has a lot of mindless chaff, like Urmor or Asphodel, the Mind Blast spell will select the commanders to attack. So if you have an army, a huge army being led by 1 or 2 commanders, a bunch of Olms blasting them is a good way to cause that army to disintegrate. However, this spell requires you to be in a cave to cast it. And though this makes absolutely no sense to me at all, Agartha on a map with no caves, which this map is, does not automatically start in a cave. Despite the fact that you are underground creatures who are living in a 1,000-year-old civilization underground, you do not have a cave in your home province. Now, I feel like this is something that should be hard-coded, that no matter where you start, no matter what the map itself actually has, Agartha should always start in a cave. But it doesn't. So I'm lost that spell, unfortunately, which had make me change my strategy yet again. And I haven't really even thought at this point yet as to what evocations and battlefield spells I'm going to be using. Obviously, earth spells are going to be pretty prevalent. Maybe magma spells, let's see. Or not this guy. We're going to have these guys mostly. So yeah, magma spells, essentially, like what I was using for my Ulm campaign. And a little bit of death, maybe, if one of these guys goes that way. But for the most part, yeah, earth and magma battlefield spells. So that'll be truth buffs. I don't think we're going to naturally get... Well, these guys can do Blade Wind. These guys cannot, unless they have like Earth Boots or something. So we'll probably focus on the magma spells. And that's that for this turn. So. Oh, let's see. Read messages. I did get a message. Oh, no, I didn't. Okay. Quit without saving. Alright, turn 2. So, in turn 2, there was a lot of communication. Daz wrote to me, Daz is man, and he's saying, basically, that he wants to focus attention on Urmor and Asphodel, being as they are both nations of death, and he wants us to join him in alliance, which I'm happy to do. Next, however, I hear from Asphodel, who is being very, very friendly for a nation of shambling, vine-animated bones. So he's basically saying we don't want any trouble with you, and I don't want any trouble with him either. Vanheim is essentially starting off with a threatening posture and saying that Thrones of Ascension should be left to them to guard. Finally, Shinuyama is saying basically that the Bakemono have overthrown the Oni, and Tortuga-san, the revered pretender of the Bakemono, has now come. But he also wants peace. Man has named Bishop Petter as their prophet. Ulm has named Conrad. We, of course, have named Bertibot. Asphodel has named Urist McHorny, the Minotaur Lord. And Vanheim has named Jodvig the Hearse. Oh, and Shinuyama has Torqueda Sengen, the Bakemono general. Now, let's take a look at the Great Feral. This is the throne province right next to ours. Again, we started off in a very poor area because we only have 3 bordering provinces. They do have tons of production, which is great. Resources, that is. But they don't have any money. But however, one of them is a throne, which is going to be very difficult to conquer. Let's take a look at what we've got. So as you can see, this is actually a minorly guarded throne. It's only barbarians. There are 2 chiefs and 59 barbarians, so while they hit very, very hard, they aren't too difficult to take out. Now, if we were a nation with a heavy reliance on ranged infantry, like Ulm or Man, we would have a much easier shot with these guys because they would just hide in the back and shoot them down. But we don't. So my plans at this point are to send Sneaky Pete up to Golem range, which he's actually going to be sneaking this time, and send Birdie-Bot along with essentially all of our armies up to this point, our starting army, our Troglodytes, and our Shard Guard, down into Troll Land. This will give us knowledge of another throne. One thing worth noting is my boundaries. For example, you see 3 thrones here, so you think, oh, Marcus, you're going to kill it. But watch this. This throne can only be accessed from here, here, or here. So the only way for me to get to it is to go all the way around here, or to go all the way around here. But I have to go through another throne to get there. So this throne is, even despite the fact that it connects to me, it is not a throne that I will be able to have any shot at taking in the near future. Golem range also is a blocking wall, which I showed on my map, which I'll pull up again real quick. The places where the lines are double, that's where I can't move because of blocking walls. So at this point in the game, I don't know where anyone is, so I'm just expanding to try to capture the area around my capital. I sent out some messages. I sent a message to Daz, actually. Let's take a look at that. I basically say, and this is my offer to Daz, which is, we'll give you an alliance, and I want it to be a permanent alliance, but with the escape clause that any one of us can get out of it as long as we give the other 5 turns notice. I like that. It leads to trust, and I think that's a pretty good way to go. Because that way he doesn't feel trapped by it. Like he doesn't, like if I say let's have an alliance for 6 years, you feel kind of trapped by it. This way I say, let's have an alliance for as long as we think it's a good thing, but if you decide that you don't think it's a good thing, just let me know, and that's okay. So, all right. Next turn. I was hoping to get through 5 turns in this episode, but time's a bit running out, so we might not. Turn 3. Okay, Shinuyama sends me a message. The nation of Shinuyama is curious about your intentions. You needn't spend your days living under a rock. So he's a funny guy, Tortuga. This message doesn't really make a ton of sense to me in that it has no diplomatic overtures. At this point, he probably doesn't even know where I am. So maybe he's just being friendly. I don't know. But here's our first battle. This is Birdie-Bot versus the independence of Troll Land. Now, my goal is to have the Shard Guard soak up the arrows, since they regenerate, then have my infantry close in, and the Troglodytes should then come from the back, and they should trample. Let's see how that works. So unfortunately, what you can see here is that my Shard Guard have been outpaced by our human infantry. We still win the battle, and our Troglodytes are doing what they're asked to do, but we lose some human infantry in the process. In fact, we lose 2 of them. So my next step, oh, by the way, so now we know what's up in Griffin Spires. It's an army commanded by Zeus, the Titan of the Heavens, and this must be a level 3 throne, because it is heavily guarded with Springhawks, and I hate Springhawks. Like, you do not want to mess with Springhawks unless you have some level of electrical protection, because they are nuts, and they fly to the back, and they kill everything, and I hate them. But, so already you're seeing, though, that Daz is here. So, we're going to have a little bit of problem, because Griffin Spires is 2 spaces from each of our capitals, as is the Felden Forest, and we'll see in a later episode what happens as regards to those 2 provinces. Meanwhile, I'm just simply, again, trying to consolidate my hinterlands, and the one thing that separates me, who am a lousy multiplayer, from a good multiplayer, is the knowledge of exactly how many forces it takes to capture a province. See, what makes a good multiplayer good is when they get started, they are able to expand their conquests exponentially. So instead of conquesting 1 province a turn, they immediately start conquesting 2, 3, because they know exactly how many troops it takes to get the job done. I don't. I'm of the type who I always just overwhelm the independence. I try to put as many troops as possible, the most powerful troops as possible, and as a result, maybe a more experienced multiplayer would be able to, not by this turn probably, but by the next turn or whatnot, conquer 2 provinces at a time, split this army up, knowing fully what they can conquer and what they can't. But I don't. So I'm stuck with 1 province at a time, and because we have this throne here, I also don't have a lot of options in terms of early expansion unless I take this out quickly. So I'm not necessarily getting off to the greatest start. Again, I don't claim in any way, shape, or form to be a good multiplayer. And I probably, most likely, will not win this game. I'm already expecting, because of my poor starting position and because of my lack of skill in this area, that I'm not going to do very well. But I'm still playing for fun, and it's going pretty well. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Marcus Aurelius. I'd like to thank you very much for watching. And I would, of course, like to encourage you to go and watch this series as played out by the other contenders. I'm linking down in a pinned note to their playlist, as I mentioned, and also in my playlist description. The one thing I must ask, however, is that you not tell me anything that they are doing. To keep this fair and to keep this fun, we are hoping that our viewers can, if they cross-pollinate the different channels, that they keep mum on what everyone's doing so as to not give someone an unfair advantage. So please abide by that. And also, just a reminder that I am about 10 turns ahead in real life of where this video is. So don't necessarily feel like you are burdened to give me strategic advice, because by the time you give it to me, it will already be too late. So if you would just refrain from doing that, I think we'd all be happier. All right. So once again, everyone, thanks for watching. I'm Marcus Aurelius. This is Dominions 4. Have a good one.